Michael Thompson stood frozen in the middle of the crowded ballroom, his champagne glass trembling in his hand. The words echoed in his mind like a broken record, each repetition making his chest tighten with a panic he hadn't felt since his father's funeral 5 years ago. A small, beautiful little girl with caramel skin and his exact same green eyes had just walked up to him, tugged on his expensive suit jacket, and asked the question that would shatter everything he thought he knew about his life. "Are you my daddy?" The Father's Day charity gala continued around him as if nothing had happened. Rich donors chatted about tax benefits while servers carried trays of expensive appetizers. Children from the local community center played in the designated area, their laughter mixing with the soft jazz music. But Michael couldn't hear any of it. All he could focus on was the little girl standing before him, wearing a pink dress with her hair in 2 neat braids, looking up at him with the kind of innocent hope that could break a grown man's heart. "What did you say, sweetheart?" Michael managed to whisper, crouching down to her level. His knees felt weak and he gripped the back of a nearby chair for support. The girl couldn't be more than 6 years old, but those eyes, those unmistakable green eyes that he saw in the mirror every morning, told a story that terrified him. "Are you my daddy?" she repeated, her small voice cutting through the noise of the party like a knife through silk. "Mommy says my daddy is very important and very busy and you look just like me. See?" She pointed to her eyes, then to his, with the pure logic only a child could possess. Michael's world tilted on its axis. He was 32 years old, the CEO of Thompson Industries, worth over $2 billion, and he prided himself on being in control of every aspect of his life. He had built his empire from the ground up after his father's death, turning a small construction company into a global corporation. He knew every detail of his business, every number in his accounts, every meeting in his calendar for the next 6 months. But he had no idea who this little girl was or why she looked exactly like him. "Amanda. Amanda, get back here right now." A woman's voice called out from across the room, filled with panic and embarrassment. Michael looked up to see a beautiful African-American woman rushing toward them, her face a mask of horror and fear. She wore the uniform of the catering company, a simple black dress with a white apron, and her hair was pulled back in a professional bun. But even in her work clothes she was stunning, with high cheekbones, warm brown eyes, and full lips that were currently pressed into a thin line of anxiety. The woman reached them just as Michael stood up, and for a moment their eyes met. Something flickered in her gaze, recognition maybe, or guilt, before she quickly looked away and scooped up the little girl. "I'm so sorry, sir," she said, her voice tight with forced politeness. "Amanda, we talked about this. You can't just walk up to people like that." She started to back away, the child in her arms, but Michael stepped forward. "Wait," he said, his voice hoarse. "What's your name?" The woman hesitated, clutching the little girl tighter. "Susan Williams. I work for Morrison Catering. We're handling your event tonight." She spoke quickly, professionally, as if she could somehow make this normal by treating it like a business interaction. "And her name is Amanda?" Michael asked, unable to take his eyes off the child. Now that he was looking more carefully, he could see other similarities. The shape of her nose, the curve of her eyebrows, even the way she tilted her head when she was thinking, it was like looking at a miniature, feminine version of himself. "Yes, sir. Amanda Williams." Susan's voice was barely above a whisper. "She's 6 years old." 6 years old. Michael's mind raced, trying to calculate timelines, trying to remember what he was doing 7 years ago. That was around the time his father died, when he was drinking too much and making questionable decisions. There were months of that period he couldn't remember clearly, nights that blurred together in a haze of grief and alcohol. "Mommy, why are you holding me so tight?" Amanda asked, wiggling in her mother's arms. "I want to talk to the nice man. He has pretty eyes like me." Michael felt his heart break and soar at the same time. "She's beautiful," he said softly, and meant it. "She's absolutely beautiful." Susan's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back quickly. "Thank you, sir. But we really need to go. I have to get back to work." "No, please don't go." Michael reached out without thinking, his hand almost touching Susan's arm before he caught himself. "I need to talk to you. There are things I need to know." "I can't," Susan said, shaking her head vigorously. "I can't do this. Not here, not now." She looked around the ballroom, clearly aware that people were starting to notice their conversation. "I have a job to do." "Then when?" Michael asked desperately. "When can we talk?" Susan was quiet for a long moment, her internal struggle playing out across her face. Finally she said, "I don't know if that's a good idea, Mr. Thompson. You know who I am." "Everyone knows who you are," she replied, but there was something in her voice that suggested she might know him in a different way, a more personal way. Michael felt his phone buzzing in his pocket. Probably his assistant wondering where he was. He had a speech to give in 20 minutes, donors to schmooze, a charity auction to oversee. But none of that mattered now. Nothing mattered except the little girl in the pink dress who might be his daughter. "Susan, please," he said, his voice breaking slightly. "If there's even a chance that I'm her father, don't you think she deserves to know?" Susan's composure finally cracked. A single tear rolled down her cheek before she quickly wiped it away. "You don't understand," she whispered. "This isn't how this was supposed to happen. I never wanted her to find out like this." "Find out what?" Michael asked, though he was beginning to understand. "Susan, is Amanda my daughter?" Before she could answer, a man in an expensive suit approached them. "Michael, there you are," he said, clapping Michael on the shoulder. "The auction is about to start. Are you ready for your speech?" Michael wanted to scream. He wanted to grab his business partner by the shoulders and shake him until he understood that nothing else mattered right now. Instead, he forced a smile and said, "Give me 5 minutes, Robert." But when he turned back, Susan and Amanda were gone. He spun around, scanning the crowded ballroom, but they had vanished into the sea of people. His heart hammered in his chest as he pushed through the crowd, looking for any sign of them. He found himself in the kitchen area where the catering staff was busy preparing for the next course. "Excuse me," he said to one of the workers, a young man carrying a tray of glasses. "I'm looking for Susan Williams. She was just here with her daughter." The man looked nervous about being addressed by the host of the event. "Oh, Susan? She left, sir. Said she had a family emergency. Took her little girl and went home." Michael felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. She was gone and he had no idea how to find her. He knew her name and that she worked for Morrison Catering, but that was all. He didn't know where she lived, what her phone number was, or anything about her life beyond those few terrifying minutes. "Sir?" The young man was still standing there looking concerned. "Are you all right?" Michael realized he was standing in the middle of the kitchen, probably looking as shaken as he felt. "Yes, I'm fine. Thank you." He straightened his tie and tried to compose himself. He had a charity event to host, hundreds of guests waiting for him, and a speech to give about the importance of supporting underprivileged children. The irony wasn't lost on him. As he walked back toward the ballroom, his mind raced with questions. Was Amanda really his daughter? Why hadn't Susan ever contacted him? How long had she been working for the catering company that regularly handled his events? Had she been trying to tell him, or had tonight been a complete accident? The next hour passed in a blur. Michael gave his speech, smiling and making jokes at the appropriate moments, but he felt like he was watching someone else perform. He bid on items in the auction, wrote checks to various charities and made small talk with donors, all while his mind remained focused on a 6-year-old girl with green eyes and her mother who had looked at him with such fear and sadness. When the event finally ended and the last guest had left, Michael found himself alone in his penthouse office, staring out at the city lights. He had built his empire in this building, made decisions that affected thousands of employees and millions of dollars from this very desk. But tonight all of that felt meaningless. He picked up his phone and dialed his assistant's number. "Jennifer, I need you to find someone for me. Her name is Susan Williams and she works for Morrison Catering. I need her contact information as soon as possible." "Mr. Thompson, it's almost midnight," Jennifer said, her voice groggy with sleep. "I don't care what time it is," Michael replied, his voice harder than he intended. "This is important. I need this information first thing tomorrow morning." After he hung up, Michael sat in his chair and tried to process what had happened. For the first time in his adult life he felt completely out of control. He had built his success on careful planning, calculated risks, and never leaving anything to chance. But this situation was beyond his control and it terrified him. He thought about Amanda's innocent question, "Are you my daddy?" The trust in her voice, the hope in her eyes, it had cut straight through all his defenses. If she was his daughter, he had missed 6 years of her life. 6 years of birthdays, first steps, first words, bedtime stories, scraped knees, and all the tiny moments that made up a childhood. Michael walked to the window and pressed his forehead against the cool glass. The city spread out below him, millions of lights representing millions of lives he knew nothing about. Somewhere out there, Susan was probably putting Amanda to bed, maybe trying to explain why they had left the party so suddenly. Maybe telling her that the man with the green eyes wasn't her father after all. But Michael knew, with a certainty that had nothing to do with logic or evidence, that Amanda was his daughter. He had felt it the moment she looked up at him, had seen himself reflected in her face. The question wasn't whether she was his child, the question was what he was going to do about it. As the clock struck midnight, Michael made a decision that would change everything. He was going to find Susan Williams and he was going to get answers. He was going to learn the truth about that night 7 years ago, and he was going to figure out how to be the father that Amanda deserved. The billionaire CEO who had conquered the business world was about to face his greatest challenge: learning how to be a dad. Susan Williams sat in her small apartment kitchen at 2 a.m., staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. Her hands shook as she replayed the events of the evening over and over in her mind. Amanda was finally asleep in her bedroom, exhausted from the excitement of the party and confused by their sudden departure. She had asked a dozen questions on the drive home. Why did we leave so fast, Mommy? Was the nice man mad at me? Did I do something wrong? Each question had been like a dagger to Susan's heart. She had spent 6 years carefully crafting a life where these questions would never need to be asked. She had built walls around their small world, protecting Amanda from the truth and protecting herself from the pain of what might have been. Tonight, those walls had crumbled in less than 5 minutes. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic on the street below. It wasn't much, a 2-bedroom place in a decent neighborhood, nothing fancy but clean and safe. Susan had worked 3 jobs to afford it when Amanda was a baby, determined to give her daughter stability even if she couldn't give her luxury. Every piece of furniture had been carefully saved for, every decoration chosen with love rather than money. On the kitchen table sat a photo of Amanda on her first day of kindergarten, grinning toothlessly at the camera in her new pink backpack. Next to it was a stack of bills that needed to be paid, a reminder of the reality that governed their lives. Susan made decent money as a catering manager, but it was never enough to feel secure, never enough to stop worrying about what would happen if she got sick or lost her job. She had been so careful for so long. When she first started working for Morrison Catering 3 years ago, she had made sure to research all their major clients. When she saw that Thompson Industries was one of their biggest accounts, she had considered quitting immediately. But she needed the job, and she told herself that the chances of actually encountering Michael Thompson were slim. He was a billionaire CEO. What were the odds he would notice one catering worker among dozens? For 3 years her strategy had worked. She had managed events at Thompson Industries, served at corporate parties, even worked several functions where Michael was present. She had watched him from across crowded rooms, noting how he had changed since that night 7 years ago. He was older now, more serious, more controlled. The wild, grieving young man she had met was gone, replaced by someone who seemed to have everything figured out. She had told herself that this was for the best. Amanda was happy and healthy and they had a good life together. What could Michael Thompson offer them that they didn't already have? Money, yes, but also complications, media attention, and the upheaval of everything they had built. Amanda didn't need a father who might disappear from her life just as suddenly as he had appeared. But tonight, seeing the look on Michael's face when Amanda asked her question, Susan realized she might have been lying to herself. The shock in his eyes hadn't been anger or annoyance, it had been wonder. And when he looked at Amanda, she saw something she hadn't expected: instant, overwhelming love. Susan's phone buzzed on the table, startling her from her thoughts. A text from her sister Nicole. How was the fancy party? Did you bring me any leftover champagne? Nicole was the only person who knew the truth about Amanda's father. She had been the one to find Susan crying in a bathroom stall 7 years ago, pregnant and terrified. She had been the one to help with midnight feedings and babysitting when Susan was working multiple jobs. She had also been the one to argue repeatedly that Susan should tell Michael the truth. Call me when you get this, Susan typed back. Something happened tonight. Her phone rang within seconds. Girl, what's wrong? You sound terrible in that text. Susan took a shaky breath. Nicole, he knows about Amanda. She walked right up to him and asked if he was her daddy. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Oh honey, what did you do? I panicked. I grabbed Amanda and we left. Just left, right in the middle of the event. I probably lost my job. Susan, you can't keep running from this. That little girl deserves to know who her father is, and frankly, so does he. You don't understand, Susan said, her voice rising. You didn't see the look on his face. He was shocked, Nicole. Completely shocked. What if he doesn't want her? What if he thinks I'm just some gold digger trying to trap him? What if he does want her? Nicole countered. What if he's been wondering about that night too? Honey, you've been carrying this burden alone for 6 years. Maybe it's time to share it. Susan stood up and walked to Amanda's bedroom door, peering in at her sleeping daughter. Amanda was curled up under her favorite blanket, a stuffed elephant clutched in her arms. She looked so peaceful, so innocent. How could Susan explain to her that her father was one of the most powerful men in the city? How could she prepare her 6-year-old for the media circus that would inevitably follow? "I'm scared, Nicole," she whispered into the phone. "I'm scared that if I tell him the truth, everything will change. And I'm scared that if I don't, I'll be robbing Amanda of the chance to know her father." "Change isn't always bad, Susan. Look at what you've accomplished on your own. You're raising an amazing little girl, you have a good job, you've built a life. But that doesn't mean you have to do everything alone forever." After they hung up, Susan sat on the edge of Amanda's bed and gently stroked her daughter's hair. Amanda stirred slightly, murmuring "Daddy" in her sleep, and Susan's heart clenched. Even in her dreams, her daughter was thinking about the man she had met tonight. Susan remembered the night she and Michael had met, though she had tried to forget it for years. She had been 22, working as a waitress at an upscale restaurant, trying to save money for nursing school. It was late, almost closing time, when Michael had stumbled in, clearly drunk and emotionally distraught. He had been alone, which was unusual for someone of his social status, and he had looked lost in a way that had touched her heart. She should have refused to serve him, he had clearly had enough to drink already. But there had been something in his eyes, a pain that reminded her of her own struggles, that made her want to help. Instead of alcohol, she had brought him coffee and stayed to talk when her shift ended. He had told her about his father's death, about the pressure of suddenly running a company he felt unprepared for, about the loneliness of being surrounded by people who wanted something from him. She had shared her own story, growing up in foster care, working multiple jobs to pay for school, dreams of becoming a nurse so she could help people. They had talked until dawn, finding comfort in each other's company. When they finally left the restaurant together, it had felt natural to continue their conversation at her apartment. What happened next had been gentle, tender, and completely unexpected for both of them. Michael had left the next morning with promises to call, to take her to dinner, to see her again soon. But the call never came. Susan had waited for weeks, then months, checking her phone constantly and jumping every time it rang. She had even gone to his office once, but had been turned away by security who treated her like just another woman trying to get close to a wealthy man. When she found out she was pregnant, she had tried one more time to contact him, leaving messages with his assistant and even writing a letter that was never answered. Eventually, she had to accept that Michael Thompson had moved on, that their night together had meant nothing to him. Now, sitting in her daughter's bedroom, Susan wondered if she had been wrong. Maybe Michael hadn't received her messages. Maybe there had been some misunderstanding. Or maybe he had simply been too young and too overwhelmed to handle the news of a pregnancy. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was a number she didn't recognize. "Hello? Ms. Williams? This is Jennifer Chin, Mr. Thompson's assistant. Mr. Thompson would like to schedule a meeting with you tomorrow." Susan's heart started racing. I don't think that's a good idea. Ms. Williams, Mr. Thompson is very insistent. He simply wants to talk. He suggested meeting at Riverside Park at 2 p.m. tomorrow. It's a public place and you could bring your daughter if you'd like. The mention of Amanda made Susan's decision for her. If Michael was willing to meet in a place where children could play, maybe he was serious about wanting to be part of Amanda's life. Maybe he deserved a chance to know his daughter. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll be there." After hanging up, Susan sat in the darkness for a long time, thinking about the choice she was about to make. Tomorrow she would face Michael Thompson and answer the questions she had been avoiding for 6 years. Tomorrow she would have to decide whether to trust him with the most precious thing in her life. She looked at Amanda one more time, sleeping peacefully in her bed. "I hope I'm making the right choice, baby girl," she whispered. "I hope your daddy is ready to be the man you deserve." The truth was about to come out and there would be no going back. Michael Thompson hadn't slept all night. He stood in his office at 6 a.m., watching the sunrise paint the city in shades of gold and pink, but his mind was elsewhere. He had spent the hours since midnight pacing his penthouse, trying to piece together fragments of memories from 7 years ago. The more he thought about it, the more certain he became that he had met Susan before, not just seen her at catering events but actually met her, talked to her, connected with her in some way. The months after his father's death were a blur of grief, alcohol, and poor decisions. Michael had inherited Thompson Industries at 25, thrust into a position he wasn't prepared for while dealing with the loss of the only family he had left. He had handled his pain in the worst possible way, drinking heavily, staying out until dawn, and making choices that his sober self would never have made. His assistant Jennifer had compiled a folder of information about Susan Williams, and Michael spread the contents across his desk. Driver's license photo, employment history, address, basic background information, but nothing that explained how their paths had crossed 7 years ago. According to the file, she had been working as a waitress at several upscale restaurants around that time, juggling multiple jobs while attending community college. Michael closed his eyes and tried to remember. There had been a restaurant, he could picture it vaguely, somewhere downtown with exposed brick walls and dim lighting. He had been drinking alone, which was unusual for him even during his darkest period. Most of the time, he had been surrounded by business associates or hangers-on, people who wanted something from him. But this particular night, he had been completely alone. A knock on his office door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called. Jennifer entered with a cup of coffee and a concerned expression. "Mr. Thompson, I've arranged the meeting with Ms. Williams as you requested. 2 o'clock at Riverside Park. But sir, I have to ask, is this about the company? Should I have legal present?" Michael looked up from the file, noting the worry in his assistant's eyes. Jennifer had been with him for 5 years, and she had never seen him this rattled. "No, this is personal. Very personal. And Jennifer, I need you to cancel all my appointments for the rest of the week." "The rest of the week?" Jennifer's voice rose slightly. "Sir, you have the Patterson merger meeting on Wednesday and the board presentation on Friday. These are major dash. I don't care." Michael's voice was firm. "Whatever this is, it's more important than any business deal. Reschedule everything." After Jennifer left, Michael continued studying the file. Susan Williams, age 28, single mother, no criminal record, good credit despite modest income. She had been working for Morrison Catering for 3 years, and her performance reviews were excellent. She was described as reliable, professional, and well-liked by both colleagues and clients. But none of this told him what he really wanted to know. What was she like as a person? What did she enjoy doing? What made her laugh? And most importantly, what had happened between them that night 7 years ago? Michael picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. "Hello, Detective Rivera? This is Michael Thompson. I need a favor." Carlos Rivera had been his father's best friend and had stayed in touch with Michael after the funeral. He was retired now, but he still had connections in the police department and private investigation services. "Michael, good to hear from you. What can I do for you?" "I need someone to help me piece together some missing time from about 7 years ago. Spring 2017, around the time my father died. I need to know where I was going, who I was seeing, what I was doing during that period." There was a pause. "Son, are you in some kind of trouble? Because if you are dash." "No, nothing like that. I think I may have met someone during that time, someone important, and I need to remember the details." Carlos was quiet for a moment. "This wouldn't have anything to do with the little girl who looks just like you, would it?" Michael's blood ran cold. "What do you know about that?" "Michael, I've been a cop for 30 years. I hear things. There's already talk about what happened at your charity event last night. A kid asking a billionaire if he's her daddy, that's the kind of story that spreads fast." Michael closed his eyes and rubbed his temples. He had hoped to have more time before the story became public, but he should have known that nothing stayed secret for long in his world. "Can you help me or not? I can put you in touch with someone who specializes in memory reconstruction. Former FBI profiler named Sarah Martinez. She's helped people recover lost memories from traumatic periods. But Michael, you need to be prepared for what you might find." "What do you mean?" "I mean that sometimes we block out memories for a reason. If you've forgotten something from that dark period of your life, there might be a good reason for it." After hanging up with Carlos, Michael sat back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. He had built his entire adult life on control and careful planning, but this situation was spinning further out of his control by the minute. In a few hours he would be meeting with a woman who might be the mother of his child, and he still couldn't remember how they had met. His phone rang again. This time it was his lawyer, David Kim. "Michael, I'm hearing some concerning rumors. Something about a paternity situation? Jesus, does everyone know already? This is a small town when it comes to gossip about people like you. I'm calling because I want you to be careful. If there's even a possibility that you're this child's father, you need to protect yourself legally." "Protect myself from what?" "From a woman who might see you as a lottery ticket." "Michael, I've seen situations like this before. A working-class woman with a child who looks like a wealthy man, it's the oldest story in the book." Michael felt a surge of anger. "You don't know anything about her. And neither do you, apparently. That's exactly my point. Promise me you won't sign anything or make any financial commitments until we can properly investigate this situation." Michael wanted to argue, but he knew David was right to be cautious. He had built his fortune by being careful and suspicious, by never trusting anyone completely. But something about this situation felt different. The look in Susan's eyes hadn't been calculating or greedy, it had been terrified. At noon, Michael left his office and drove to Riverside Park. He arrived early, wanting to observe the meeting place and gather his thoughts. The park was busy with families enjoying the warm weather, children playing on the playground while their parents watched from nearby benches. It was the kind of normal, everyday scene that Michael rarely experienced in his carefully controlled world. He spotted Susan before she saw him. She was walking across the grass with Amanda, both of them dressed casually in jeans and t-shirts. Amanda was skipping ahead, chasing a butterfly, while Susan followed at a slower pace, clearly nervous about the meeting. When Susan finally spotted Michael sitting on a bench near the playground, she took a deep breath and walked over to him. Amanda noticed him too and waved enthusiastically. "Hi, Mr. Green Eyes," Amanda called out, running ahead of her mother. Michael couldn't help but smile. "Hi there, Amanda. How are you today?" "I'm good. Mommy said we're going to have a grown-up talk, but I can play on the swings while you talk. Want to push me on the swings first?" Michael looked at Susan, who nodded silently. "I'd love to," he said. For the next 15 minutes, Michael pushed Amanda on the swings while they chatted about her favorite colors, her toy elephant, and her best friend at school. She was bright and funny, with an infectious laugh that made Michael's chest ache with an emotion he couldn't name. Every gesture, every expression reminded him of himself as a child, and he found himself studying her features for more similarities. When Amanda finally got tired of swinging and ran off to play on the jungle gym, Michael and Susan sat on the bench together. For a moment, neither of them spoke, watching Amanda climb and play with the other children. "She's amazing," Michael said finally. "She is," Susan agreed. "She's the best thing that ever happened to me." "Susan, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Michael turned to face her. "Is Amanda my daughter?" Susan was quiet for a long moment, her eyes fixed on Amanda. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Yes." The simple word hit Michael like a physical blow. Even though he had suspected it, even though he had been almost certain, hearing it confirmed made it real in a way that took his breath away. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "I tried." Susan's eyes filled with tears. "I tried to contact you when I found out I was pregnant. I called your office, I wrote letters, I even tried to see you in person. But I never got through. Your people made it very clear that you didn't want to be contacted by women making claims about you." Michael felt sick. "I never got any messages. I never knew you were trying to reach me. I figured as much, eventually. But by then I had already decided that maybe it was better this way. You had your life and I had mine. I didn't want to be the complication that disrupted everything you had built. So you just decided to raise her alone?" "I decided to protect her," Susan said firmly. "From disappointment, from rejection, from having a father who might not want her. I wanted her to feel secure and loved, not like she was some mistake that needed to be hidden." Michael watched Amanda hanging upside down from the monkey bars, her laugh carrying across the playground. "She doesn't look like a mistake to me. She looks like a miracle." Susan looked at him with surprise. "You really mean that?" "I do. Susan, I don't remember everything about the night we met, but I remember enough to know that it wasn't casual for me. I was in a dark place and somehow you made it better. If Amanda came from that night, then she's the best thing that ever happened to me too." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching their daughter play. Finally, Susan spoke again. "What happens now?" "Now," Michael said, "I want to be her father. I want to be part of her life if you'll let me. I want to know everything about her, her favorite foods, her bedtime stories, her dreams." Susan wiped away a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "It's not going to be easy, Michael. She's used to it being just us. And there are going to be questions, media attention, people who will judge us both." "I don't care about any of that," Michael said. "I only care about her. And about you." The last words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning that neither of them was quite ready to address. Before either could respond, Amanda came running back to them, her face flushed with excitement. "Mommy? Mr. Green Eyes. I made a new friend. Her name is Emma and she has a puppy." Amanda climbed onto the bench between them, completely unaware of the life-changing conversation that had just taken place. Michael looked at this little girl, his daughter, and felt something shift inside him. For the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to love someone more than yourself. He would do anything to protect this child, to make her happy, to be the father she deserved. That's wonderful, sweetie, Susan said, smoothing Amanda's hair. Did you tell Emma thank you for letting you pet her puppy? Yes, Mommy. I used my manners. Amanda looked up at Michael with those familiar green eyes. Mr. Green Eyes, do you have a puppy? Michael chuckled. No, I don't. But maybe we could look into getting one someday. Really? Amanda's eyes lit up with excitement. Mommy, did you hear that? He said maybe we could get a puppy. Susan shot Michael a look that was half amused, half exasperated. Amanda, we've talked about this. Puppies are a big responsibility. But if Mr. Green Eyes helps us, we could do it together. Amanda said with the simple logic of a 6-year-old. Michael felt his heart skip a beat. Together. The word held so much promise, so much possibility. He caught Susan's eye and saw that she was thinking the same thing. We'll see, baby girl, Susan said softly. We'll see. 3 days after the park meeting, Michael sat in his office across from Sarah Martinez, the former FBI profiler that Detective Rivera had recommended. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a calming presence that made Michael feel like he could trust her with his most vulnerable memories. Memory reconstruction isn't an exact science, Sarah explained, setting up a small recording device on the desk between them. Sometimes the mind blocks out traumatic events as a protective mechanism. But sometimes it's simply a matter of the right triggers to help you remember. I need to remember, Michael said firmly. My daughter deserves to know the truth about how her parents met. Sarah nodded. Let's start with what you do remember. You said this was around the time of your father's death in the spring of 2017. Michael closed his eyes and leaned back in his chair. My father died on March 15th. Heart attack at his desk. I was in London on business when I got the call. The funeral was 3 days later, and after that, he trailed off, the memories becoming hazy. Take your time. What do you remember about your emotional state during that period? I was angry. Angry at him for dying, angry at myself for not being there, angry at the world for expecting me to just step into his shoes like nothing had happened. I started drinking heavily, which I'd never done before. I was making terrible business decisions, showing up late to meetings, isolating myself from friends. Sarah made notes on her pad. Where were you living at the time? I had an apartment downtown near the office. I couldn't stand being in the family house, too many memories. I was basically living like a college student, ordering takeout and staying out until dawn. And you mentioned you were going to restaurants during this time? Michael opened his eyes. Yes, but not for meals. I was going to bars mostly. But there was one place. He paused, the memory becoming clearer. It was a restaurant, but they had a bar area. I went there because it was quiet, not crowded with the usual business crowd. Can you describe it? Brick walls, dim lighting, jazz music playing softly. It was the kind of place where you could sit alone and nobody bothered you. Michael's voice became more confident as the details emerged. There was a waitress there, a young woman with the most beautiful smile. She had this way of moving that was graceful, purposeful. What did she look like? Beautiful. African American, probably early 20s, with these warm brown eyes that seemed to see right through all my anger and pain. She had her hair pulled back in a ponytail and she wore the standard uniform, black dress, white apron, but somehow she made it look elegant. Sarah continued taking notes. Do you remember interacting with her? Yes. Michael's voice grew softer. I had been drinking before I got there and I ordered another whiskey. But instead of bringing me alcohol, she brought me coffee. Black coffee and a plate of food I hadn't ordered. What did you do? I was going to be angry about it, but she looked at me with such kindness. She said something like, "You look like you need this more than another drink." And she was right. I hadn't eaten in days. The memories were flowing more freely now, and Michael felt like he was reliving that night rather than simply remembering it. I stayed until closing time. She sat with me after her shift ended and we talked for hours. About everything: my father, her dreams, our fears, our hopes. What did she tell you about herself? She was working multiple jobs to pay for nursing school. She had grown up in foster care, moved around a lot as a kid. She wanted to be a pediatric nurse because she said children deserved to have someone who truly cared about them, especially when they were scared or hurting. Sarah looked up from her notes. That's very specific. These memories are coming back clearly now. Yes, they are. Michael stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. We left the restaurant together around 4 a.m. I offered to drive her home, but she said she lived nearby and could walk. I insisted on walking with her because it wasn't safe for her to be alone at that hour. And then? We got to her apartment building, a small place in a decent neighborhood, nothing fancy but clean and safe. She invited me up for coffee and I said yes. We talked some more on her couch and I remember feeling like I could tell her anything. She listened without judgment, without trying to fix me or give me advice. She just accepted me exactly as I was. Michael turned back to Sarah. And then we made love. It wasn't casual or meaningless. It was beautiful and tender and exactly what we both needed in that moment. We fell asleep in each other's arms, and I woke up the next morning feeling like maybe everything would be okay. What happened when you woke up? I had to leave early for a meeting, but I promised to call her that day. I took her number, kissed her goodbye, and told her I wanted to see her again soon. Michael's expression darkened. But I never called. Why not? I don't know. I got caught up in work, in the demands of running the company. Days turned into weeks and I kept telling myself I would call tomorrow. And then one day I realized so much time had passed that it would be awkward to reach out. Sarah put down her pen. Michael, I want you to think carefully about this. Are you sure you never tried to contact her? Are you sure you never received any messages from her? Michael frowned. I'm sure I never called her. But messages. He thought back to that chaotic period of his life. I was barely functioning. Jennifer wasn't my assistant yet. I had someone else then. Someone who was very protective of my time and my privacy. Who? Patricia Wells. She had been my father's assistant for years, and she stayed on to help me transition into the CEO role. She was very controlling. She screened all my calls, filtered my mail, managed my schedule like a military operation. Sarah leaned forward. Is it possible that Ms. Williams tried to contact you through your office? It's possible. Patricia was very focused on protecting me from what she called distractions. She made it clear that she thought I was too vulnerable after my father's death to handle personal complications. What happened to Patricia? She retired about 6 months later. Said she had done her job of getting me settled in the position. Michael felt a chill run down his spine. Sarah, what if Susan did try to contact me? What if Patricia intercepted her messages? That's something you need to investigate. But first, let's finish reconstructing that night. You said you made love. Do you remember if you used protection? Michael's face reddened. I don't think we did. We were both emotional, caught up in the moment. It wasn't planned. And you never suspected that she might have become pregnant? No. Like I said, I convinced myself that it was just one night, that it didn't mean anything. I threw myself into work and tried to forget about it. Michael sat back down, his head in his hands. God, what kind of man does that make me? It makes you human, Sarah said gently. You were grieving, overwhelmed, and probably not thinking clearly. The important thing is what you do now. After Sarah left, Michael sat alone in his office, processing everything he had remembered. The night with Susan hadn't been a meaningless encounter. It had been something special, something that had touched his soul during the darkest period of his life. And if Patricia had intercepted Susan's attempts to contact him, then he had lost 6 years with his daughter not through his own choice, but through someone else's misguided protection. He picked up his phone and dialed his lawyer. David, I need you to find Patricia Wells. I need to know if she's still alive, and if she is, I need to speak with her immediately. Michael, what's this about? I think she may have information about why Susan Williams was never able to contact me 7 years ago. And David, I also need you to arrange for a DNA test. I want official confirmation that Amanda is my daughter. Are you sure about this? Once you have that confirmation, there's no going back. Michael looked at the framed photo on his desk, a picture of him and his father taken just months before the older man's death. His father had always told him that family was the most important thing in life, more important than money or success or anything else. I'm sure, Michael said firmly. I want to know the truth, all of it. And I want to make things right with Susan and Amanda. That evening, Michael drove to the address Jennifer had provided for Susan's apartment. He sat in his car for a few minutes, gathering his courage before walking up to the building and pressing the buzzer for apartment 3B. Hello. Susan's voice came through the intercom. Susan, it's Michael. I was wondering if I could see you and Amanda tonight. I have some things I need to tell you. There was a pause. Come up. Michael climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, his heart pounding with each step. When Susan opened the door, she was wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked beautiful and tired, and Michael felt a rush of the same protectiveness he had felt all those years ago. Daddy. Amanda came running to the door, launching herself into Michael's arms. The word hit him like a lightning bolt. She had started calling him Daddy without any prompting from him or Susan. Hi, sweetheart, he said, hugging her tight. How was your day? Good. I drew you a picture. Amanda wriggled out of his arms and ran to get a piece of paper from the kitchen table. It was a crayon drawing of 3 stick figures holding hands under a rainbow. "That's you and that's me and that's Mommy." Michael studied the drawing, his throat tight with emotion. "It's perfect, Amanda. Thank you." As Amanda ran back to her room to get ready for bed, Michael and Susan sat on the couch together. The apartment was small but cozy, filled with photos of Amanda and evidence of the life they had built together. "I remember now," Michael said quietly. "I remember the night we met, the restaurant, everything. And Susan, I need you to know that it wasn't just a random encounter for me. What we shared that night, it meant something." Susan's eyes filled with tears. "It meant something to me too. That's why it hurt so much when you never called." "I think I know why you never heard from me," Michael said. "And I think I know why your messages never reached me. I'm having it investigated, but I believe someone was intercepting your communications." "What do you mean?" "My father's assistant. She was very protective of me after he died, and she made it clear that she thought I needed to focus on work, not personal relationships. If you called or wrote, she would have seen it as a distraction." Susan was quiet for a long moment. "So all these years you never knew?" "I never knew. And I'm sorry, Susan. I'm sorry for the pain you must have felt, and I'm sorry that I missed the first 6 years of Amanda's life. But I'm here now and I want to make up for lost time." "What does that mean exactly?" Michael took a deep breath. "It means I want to be her father in every way that matters. I want to be there for school plays and scraped knees and bedtime stories. I want to help with homework and birthday parties and everything else that comes with raising a child." "And what about us?" Susan asked softly. "What about you and me?" Michael looked into her eyes, seeing the same warmth and vulnerability that had drawn him to her 7 years ago. "I don't know yet. I know that what we had was real, and I know that I never stopped thinking about you, even when I tried to forget. But we're different people now and we have Amanda to think about." "Yes, we do," Susan agreed. "She has to come first in all of this." "She does. But that doesn't mean we can't explore what might be possible between us. We have time, Susan. We have time to figure it out." As if summoned by their conversation, Amanda appeared in the doorway in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed elephant. "Daddy, will you read me a story?" Michael's heart swelled at the simple request. "Of course, sweetheart." As he followed Amanda to her bedroom, Michael felt like he was finally stepping into the life he was meant to live. He had been successful in business, had built an empire and accumulated wealth beyond most people's dreams. But none of that compared to the joy of being called Daddy by the little girl who had his eyes and his smile. The investigation into his past could wait until tomorrow. Tonight he just wanted to be a father. The next morning, Michael's lawyer called with news that would change everything. "I found Patricia Wells," David said. "She's living in a retirement community in Florida. And Michael, when I mentioned your name, she had quite a reaction." "What kind of reaction?" "She started crying and said she'd been waiting for this call for 7 years. She wants to talk to you immediately." Michael felt his heart rate increase. "Set it up. I'll fly down there today." "Are you sure you want to do this in person? We could handle this over the phone." "No, I need to see her face when she tells me what she did." 6 hours later, Michael sat in the bright, airy lobby of Sunset Gardens Retirement Community, waiting for Patricia Wells to join him. When she finally appeared, he barely recognized her. The formidable woman who had once controlled his entire schedule was now frail and elderly, walking with a cane and looking every one of her 78 years. "Michael," she said, her voice shaking. "I wondered when this day would come." They found a quiet corner of the lobby, and Patricia settled into a chair across from him. Her hands trembled as she folded them in her lap. "You know why I'm here," Michael said without preamble. "The girl. Susan Williams. And the baby." Patricia's voice was barely above a whisper. "I've been carrying this guilt for 7 years, Michael. Every day I wonder if I made the right choice." "What choice? What did you do?" Patricia took a shaky breath. "After your father died, you were so lost, so broken. You were drinking too much, making poor decisions, and I was terrified that you were going to destroy everything your father had built. When that girl started calling, leaving messages, trying to see you, I thought she was just another opportunist trying to take advantage of your vulnerability." "What messages? What exactly did she say?" "At first she just wanted to talk to you. Said she had met you at a restaurant and that you had promised to call. I thought she was lying. You were meeting so many people during that time, and most of them wanted something from you." Michael felt his anger building. "You never told me she called. I thought I was protecting you. You were barely holding it together, and I didn't want you distracted by some girl who was probably just trying to get close to you for money. But she kept calling. Yes. And then Patricia's voice broke. Then she called to say she was pregnant. The words hit Michael like a physical blow. When? About 3 months after your father's funeral. She was crying, scared, asking to speak to you. She said she needed to tell you something important about that night you spent together. Michael stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. And you never told me. I thought she was lying. Do you understand how many women called claiming to be pregnant by rich men? I thought it was a scam, a way to get money from you. So what did you do? Patricia was crying now. I told her you didn't want to be contacted. I said if she was really pregnant, she should handle it herself and not bother you with her problems. Michael turned back to her, his face dark with anger. You what? I thought I was saving you from a gold digger. You were so fragile, Michael. If some girl had come forward claiming to be having your baby, it would have destroyed you. That wasn't your decision to make. Michael's voice echoed through the lobby, causing other residents to look their way. He lowered his voice, but his anger was still palpable. You had no right to make that choice for me. She called one more time about a month later. Said she was going to have the baby and that she hoped someday you would want to meet your child. I told her to leave you alone or I would call the police. Michael felt sick. My God, Patricia. Do you have any idea what you've done? I kept the company together. I kept you focused on what was important. What was important was that I had a daughter who needed me. What was important was that there was a woman who was scared and alone and trying to do the right thing by telling me the truth. Patricia was sobbing now. I'm sorry, Michael. I'm so sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing. Michael sat back down, his anger giving way to exhaustion. Is there anything else? Any other messages or letters that you intercepted? No. After that second call, she never contacted the office again. I thought she had moved on, found someone else maybe. She was raising my daughter alone, Patricia. For 6 years, she struggled as a single mother because you decided I didn't deserve to know the truth. Michael stood up to leave, but Patricia grabbed his arm with surprising strength. Wait. There's something else you need to know. What? I kept records. Call logs, notes about what she said. I thought maybe someday you might need them if she ever came back asking for money. Where are these records? In my files at home. I can send them to you. Michael, I know I can't undo what I did, but maybe those records can help you understand what really happened. As Michael flew back to his city that evening, he felt a mixture of rage and relief. He was furious at Patricia for her interference, but he was also grateful to finally understand what had happened. Susan hadn't abandoned him or decided he wasn't worth contacting. She had tried repeatedly to do the right thing, and she had been turned away by someone who thought they knew better. The records Patricia had promised were waiting for him when he arrived home. As he read through them, his heart broke for the young woman who had been so desperate to reach him. The call logs showed multiple attempts over several months, and Patricia's notes revealed the pain in Susan's voice during their conversations. May 15, 2017. K. Williams called again. Claims to be pregnant. Crying. Asked to speak to MT about their night together. Told her MT is not available and suggested she handle her personal problems elsewhere. June 20, 2017. K. Williams called final time. Said she's decided to have the baby and hopes MT will want to meet his child someday. Told her not to call again or will involve legal action. Michael set the papers aside and called Susan. Can I come over? I need to tell you about Patricia. An hour later he sat on Susan's couch watching her read through the records. She was quiet for a long time, her fingers tracing the dates and notes. I remember these calls, she said finally. That woman was so cold, so dismissive. She made me feel like I was some kind of criminal for trying to reach you. Susan, I'm so sorry. If I had known, if I had received even one of your messages, everything would have been different. I know that now. But at the time, I thought you had instructed her to keep me away. I thought you knew about the pregnancy and just didn't care. Michael moved closer to her on the couch. I would have cared. I would have been there for you and for Amanda from the beginning. I believe you. But Michael, we can't change the past. We can only decide what to do moving forward. I know. And I've made my decision. I want to be Amanda's father officially. I want to give her my name if she wants it, and I want to set up a trust fund for her future. I want to make sure she never has to worry about money or security. Susan nodded. I think she'd like that. She's been asking me why her last name is different from yours. And I want to help you too. I know you've been struggling financially, working hard to give Amanda a good life. You shouldn't have to do that alone anymore. Michael, I don't want your money. I can take care of myself. I know you can. You've proven that over the past 6 years. But you shouldn't have to. Let me help, not because you need it but because I want to. Because you're the mother of my daughter and because... He trailed off, not sure how to finish the sentence. Because what? Because I think I'm falling in love with you. Again, or maybe still. I don't know which, but I know that being around you and Amanda feels like coming home. Susan's eyes filled with tears. Michael, this is all happening so fast. 3 weeks ago, Amanda didn't even know who her father was. Now you're talking about love and trust funds and changing everything. I know it's fast, but I've lost 6 years already. I don't want to lose any more time. Before Susan could respond, Amanda appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. Mommy, I can't sleep. Can Daddy read me another story? Michael looked at Susan, who nodded. Of course, sweetheart, he said, scooping Amanda up in his arms. What story do you want to hear? As he carried his daughter to her bedroom, Michael felt a sense of rightness that he had never experienced before. This was what he had been missing all his life, not just success or wealth but family. Well, purpose beyond his own ambition. He might have lost 6 years, but he was determined to make the most of all the years to come. The DNA test results arrived on a Tuesday morning, though Michael had already known what they would say. Amanda Thompson was officially his daughter, with a 99.9% probability of paternity. He stared at the document for a long time, not because he doubted the results, but because seeing it in black and white made it feel more real somehow. He called Susan immediately. The results are in. And? She's mine. Officially, legally, scientifically, she's my daughter. There was a pause on the other end of the line. How do you feel about that? Like the luckiest man alive, Michael said honestly. Susan, I want to celebrate. Can I take you and Amanda to dinner tonight? Somewhere special. Michael, I don't know if that's a good idea. Amanda's bedtime is at 8, and fancy restaurants make her uncomfortable. Then we'll go somewhere she'll love. Chuck E. Cheese, McDonald's, wherever she wants to go. Susan laughed despite herself. The billionaire CEO wants to take his daughter to Chuck E. Cheese? The father wants to take his daughter anywhere that makes her happy. That evening, Michael found himself in a loud, chaotic restaurant filled with screaming children and mechanical animals singing off-key songs. Amanda was in heaven, running from game to game with a cup full of tokens, while Michael and Susan sat at a sticky table eating mediocre pizza. This is not what I imagined my life would look like a month ago, Michael said, watching Amanda try to throw balls into a clown's mouth. Having second thoughts? Susan asked, wiping sauce from her chin. Not even close. This is the most fun I've had in years. Daddy, come play with me. Amanda called out, waving him over to a basketball game. Michael had never been called Daddy by anyone until 3 weeks ago, but the word never failed to make his heart skip a beat. He joined Amanda at the game and they spent the next hour playing every game in the place, collecting tickets and laughing at each other's attempts to win prizes. When they finally left with a bag full of cheap plastic toys that Amanda treasured like diamonds, Michael felt more accomplished than he had after closing any business deal. She's going to crash hard tonight, Susan said as they walked to his car. Amanda was already yawning, clutching a stuffed puppy she had won at the prize counter. Good. She had fun. We all did, Susan admitted. I haven't seen her this happy in a long time. As they drove back to Susan's apartment, Michael made a decision. I want to tell her the truth. About me being her father. She's been calling me Daddy, but I don't think she really understands what that means. Are you sure you're ready for that? Once we tell her, there's no going back. I'm sure. She deserves to know. The next evening, Michael and Susan sat Amanda down on the couch for what they hoped would be a life-changing conversation. Amanda, honey, we need to talk to you about something important, Susan began. Am I in trouble? Amanda asked, her eyes wide. No, sweetheart, you're not in trouble, Michael said, pulling her onto his lap. We want to tell you something wonderful. What? Michael looked at Susan, who nodded encouragingly. Amanda, do you remember when you asked me if I was your daddy? Yes. At the fancy party. Well, it turns out you were right. I am your daddy. Your real daddy. Amanda stared at him for a moment, processing this information. You mean you're not going to go away? The question broke Michael's heart. No, sweetheart. I'm never going away. I'm your daddy, and daddies don't leave their little girls. But where were you before? When I was little? Michael and Susan exchanged glances. They had prepared for this question, but it was still difficult to answer in terms a 6-year-old could understand. I didn't know about you, Michael said gently. Your mommy and I got separated and I didn't know that you existed. But now I do and I want to be your daddy forever. Amanda was quiet for a moment, then said, Does this mean I can have your last name? Like other kids at school? If you want to, yes. Would you like that? Yes. I want to be Amanda Thompson. Michael felt tears spring to his eyes. Then that's what we'll do. And can we get a puppy now? Since you're my real daddy? Michael laughed through his tears. We'll see about the puppy. Over the following weeks, Michael threw himself into fatherhood with the same intensity he had once reserved for business deals. He learned about Amanda's school schedule, her favorite foods, her friends' names. He attended a parent-teacher conference where Amanda's teacher praised her intelligence and creativity. He helped with homework and read bedtime stories and kissed scraped knees. He also started spending more time with Susan, and slowly, carefully, they began to explore the possibility of a relationship. They took long walks in the park while Amanda played, had quiet dinners after she went to bed, and slowly rebuilt the connection they had shared 7 years ago. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, Susan admitted one evening as they sat on her couch after putting Amanda to bed. What do you mean? This all feels too good to be true. The perfect father figure appearing in Amanda's life, the possibility of us being together, it's like a fairy tale. And fairy tales don't happen to girls like me. Michael turned to face her fully. What do you mean girls like you? Single mothers who work in catering. Girls who grew up in foster care without family or money or connections. Girls who have to work 3 jobs just to afford a decent apartment. Susan, you're selling yourself short. You're intelligent, beautiful, strong, and you've raised an incredible daughter on your own. You're not some charity case that I'm helping out of pity. Then what am I? Michael reached for her hand. You're the woman I've been looking for my entire life without even knowing it. You're the mother of my daughter, and you're someone I could see myself building a future with. Before Susan could respond, they heard Amanda calling from her bedroom. Mommy? Daddy? I had a bad dream. They rushed to her room where Amanda was sitting up in bed, tears streaming down her face. What happened, sweetheart? Michael asked, sitting on the edge of her bed. I dreamed that you went away again. That you decided you didn't want to be my daddy anymore. Michael's heart clenched. Oh, baby girl. That's never going to happen. I promise you I will never leave you. But what if you get tired of me? What if I'm not good enough? Amanda Elizabeth Williams, Michael said firmly, you are the most important person in the world to me. You are smart and funny and beautiful and perfect exactly as you are. I could never get tired of you and you will always be good enough. Do you understand me? Amanda nodded, but she still looked uncertain. I have an idea, Michael said. What if we made it official? What if I adopted you legally so that everyone knows you're my daughter? What does that mean? It means that no matter what happens you'll always be my little girl. It means your name will be Amanda Thompson, and it means that I'll always be your daddy no matter what. Amanda's face lit up. Really? We can do that? If your mommy agrees, yes. Amanda looked at Susan, who was wiping away tears. Can we, mommy? Please? If that's what you want, baby girl. I do. I want to be a real Thompson. As Michael tucked Amanda back into bed, she grabbed his hand. Daddy, will you sing me a song? I'm not much of a singer, sweetheart. I don't care. I just want to hear your voice so I know you're really here. Michael's voice was rough with emotion as he sang a simple lullaby, stroking Amanda's hair until she fell asleep. When he rejoined Susan in the living room, she was crying. She's never going to doubt that she's loved, Susan said. The way you look at her, the way you talk to her, she's going to grow up knowing she's the most important thing in the world to her father. She is the most important thing in the world to me. Both of you are. Michael, I think I'm falling in love with you too. Think? No. I know I'm falling in love with you. But I'm scared. Of what? Of losing this. Of something going wrong and Amanda getting hurt. Of not being enough for someone like you. Michael pulled her into his arms. You're everything I need, Susan. You and Amanda are my family now. And I'll spend the rest of my life proving that to you if you'll let me. As they held each other on the couch, Michael realized that this was what success really meant. Not the billions in his bank account or the empire he had built, but this, holding the woman he loved while their daughter slept peacefully in the next room, knowing that he was exactly where he belonged. 3 months after the adoption papers were filed, Michael Thompson stood in the hallway of Lincoln Elementary School, wearing a suit that probably cost more than most families' monthly rent, but feeling more nervous than he had during any board meeting. Today was Amanda's school play, and she had specifically requested that both her parents attend. You're fidgeting, Susan observed, smoothing his tie with a gentle smile. She looked beautiful in a simple blue dress, her hair styled elegantly but practically. Over the past few months she had grown more comfortable in Michael's world, though she still insisted on maintaining her independence. I'm not fidgeting, Michael protested, then immediately stopped adjusting his cufflinks. I just want this to be perfect for her. It will be. You being here is all she wanted. They found seats in the crowded auditorium, surrounded by other parents with cameras and smartphones ready. Michael had hired a professional photographer to capture the event, but he also had his own phone out, not wanting to miss a single moment. When the curtain rose and the first graders took the stage dressed as various farm animals, Michael spotted Amanda immediately. She was playing a sheep, complete with cotton balls glued to a white costume, and her face was radiant with excitement. When she saw them in the audience, she waved enthusiastically, nearly losing her sheep ears in the process. That's my daughter, Michael whispered to Susan, his voice thick with pride. Our daughter, Susan corrected gently. The play was adorable chaos, children forgetting their lines, costumes falling apart, and at least 3 instances of stage fright that resulted in tears. But when it was Amanda's turn to recite her lines about being a happy sheep on the farm, she delivered them with confidence and joy that made Michael's heart swell. After the performance, they waited in the hallway as parents and children celebrated. Amanda came running toward them, still in her sheep costume, and launched herself into Michael's arms. Did you see me, Daddy? Did you see me be a sheep? You were the most beautiful sheep I've ever seen, Michael said, spinning her around. I'm so proud of you. We both are, Susan added, kissing Amanda's forehead. You remembered all your lines perfectly. Mrs. Henderson said I was a natural performer. Maybe I could be in movies like the pretty ladies on TV. Michael and Susan exchanged amused glances. Maybe someday, sweetheart. But right now, you're perfect just being our little girl. As they walked to the car, Amanda chattering excitedly about the play, Michael's phone buzzed with a text from his business partner Robert. Board meeting moved to 4 p.m. today. Need you there for the Henderson contract discussion. Michael frowned. They had planned to take Amanda out for ice cream to celebrate her performance, and then spend the afternoon at the park. It was Friday and they rarely got full afternoons together due to his work schedule. Everything okay? Susan asked, noticing his expression. Work issue. Robert wants to move a meeting to this afternoon. Go, Susan said without hesitation. We can celebrate another time. No. Michael turned off his phone and slipped it into his pocket. The Henderson contract can wait. Today is about Amanda. Michael, if it's important. You and Amanda are important. This is important. Everything else can wait. At the ice cream shop, Amanda regaled them with stories about rehearsals while managing to get more chocolate ice cream on her face than in her mouth. Michael found himself taking dozens of photos, wanting to capture every moment of her joy. Daddy, after we go to the park, can we go to your house? I want to see my room again. Michael had recently bought a house in Susan's neighborhood, nothing too ostentatious, but large enough for a family. He had decorated a bedroom for Amanda, complete with a princess bed and enough toys to stock a small store. Susan had initially protested the extravagance, but she had softened when she saw how much Amanda loved having her own space at her father's house. Of course, sweetheart. Maybe Mommy would like to see the new furniture I ordered for the living room. More furniture? Susan raised an eyebrow. The house was already fully furnished. I may have ordered a few things online. I'm still getting used to this whole making a house feel like a home thing. At the park, they spent 2 hours on the playground. Michael pushed Amanda on the swings until his arms ached, helped her across the monkey bars, and even went down the slide a few times himself, much to the amusement of other parents. Susan sat on a bench nearby, taking photos and marveling at how natural Michael looked as a father. He's really good with her, another mother commented, sitting down next to Susan. Your husband seems to genuinely enjoy being here. Susan started to correct the assumption about marriage, then decided it wasn't worth explaining. He does. He's an amazing father. How long have you been together? It's complicated, Susan said with a smile. But we're figuring it out. When they finally arrived at Michael's house, Amanda immediately ran to her room to show off her sheep costume to her collection of stuffed animals. Michael and Susan sat in the living room, which indeed featured several new pieces of furniture, including a comfortable reading chair by the window and a larger coffee table obviously chosen with a child in mind. You've been shopping, Susan observed. I may have gotten a little carried away. I keep seeing things and thinking, Amanda would like this or This would be good for when she stays over. Michael, you know she'd be happy sleeping on the floor as long as you're here, right? I know. But I missed 6 years of buying her things, of making sure she had everything she needed. I guess I'm overcompensating. Susan moved closer to him on the couch. You don't need to buy her love. You already have it. I know that too. But I want her to know that this is her home as much as your apartment is. I want her to feel secure here. She does. Look at her, she's completely comfortable here. They could hear Amanda in her room talking to her stuffed animals about the play and how proud her mommy and daddy had been. The sound made Michael smile every time. Susan, I've been thinking about something. What? I know we've been taking things slowly, figuring out what this relationship between us means. But I was wondering, how would you feel about moving in here? All three of us together as a family? Susan was quiet for a moment, considering. Michael, that's a big step. Are you sure you're ready for that? Having a 6-year-old around all the time isn't like these weekend visits. She gets cranky when she's tired, she has nightmares sometimes, she leaves toys everywhere. I want all of it, Michael interrupted. The good and the difficult. I want to be here for the nightmares and the cranky mornings and the toys scattered around. I want to be a real father, not just a weekend visitor. And what about us? What are we to each other in this scenario? Michael took her hands in his. I was hoping we could figure that out together. I know I love you, Susan. I know I want to build a life with you and Amanda. But I also know that you need to feel secure in whatever decision you make. I do love you, Susan said softly. But I'm scared of depending on someone again. I've been taking care of myself and Amanda for so long that the idea of sharing that responsibility feels overwhelming. You wouldn't be giving up your independence. You'd be gaining a partner. Before Susan could respond, Amanda came running into the living room, now changed into regular clothes but still glowing with excitement from her day. Daddy, can I show you the dance I learned for the play? I forgot to do it on stage. Absolutely. For the next 20 minutes, they watched Amanda perform an elaborate dance routine that seemed to involve a lot of spinning and jumping. When she finished, she took a bow to their enthusiastic applause. That was amazing, sweetheart, Michael said. You're so talented. I know, Amanda said matter-of-factly. Mrs. Henderson says I have natural rhythm. Daddy, can we have a sleepover tonight? All three of us. Michael looked at Susan, who nodded. If Mommy says it's okay. Please, Mommy? We can watch movies and eat popcorn and stay up late. All right, but not too late. You still have school on Monday. That evening, they made a nest of blankets and pillows in the living room and watched Disney movies while eating far too much popcorn. Amanda fell asleep between them during the second movie, her head on Michael's shoulder and her feet in Susan's lap. She's exhausted, Susan whispered. It was a big day for her. It was a big day for all of us. Michael carefully lifted Amanda and carried her to her bedroom, tucking her in and kissing her good night. When he returned to the living room, Susan was cleaning up the popcorn bowls. Leave those, he said. Come sit with me. They settled back on the couch and Susan curled up against his side. Michael, about what you asked earlier. You don't have to answer now. There's no pressure. I want to say yes. I want us to be a family. But I need to know that you understand what you're asking for. This isn't just about having a ready-made family. This is about commitment, about being there for the difficult times as well as the good ones. I understand. And I'm ready for all of it. What about your work? Your social obligations? You're going to have to make sacrifices. I've already started making them. The meeting I missed this afternoon? I would have missed it anyway because being here with you and Amanda is more important than any contract. Susan was quiet for a moment. Can I have some time to think about it? To talk to Amanda about what it would mean? Of course. Take all the time you need. As they sat together in the quiet house, listening to the sounds of the neighborhood settling in for the night, Michael felt a peace he had never experienced before. This was what he had been searching for his entire life. Not just success or wealth, but purpose, love, and the simple joy of being exactly where he belonged. The first sign of trouble came on a Monday morning when Michael arrived at his office to find his business partner Robert waiting with a grim expression and a stack of newspapers. We need to talk, Robert said without preamble, spreading the papers across Michael's desk. The headlines made Michael's blood run cold. Billionaire's secret love child, CEO's hidden family scandal, Thompson's baby mama revealed. Michael felt sick as he scanned the articles, each one more invasive than the last. There were photos of him and Susan at the ice cream shop, pictures of Amanda on the playground, even shots of them entering his house. The articles painted Susan as a gold-digging opportunist and portrayed their relationship as a scandal that had been carefully hidden from the public. How did this happen? Michael asked, his voice tight with anger. Someone leaked it to the press. The question is who, and more importantly, what are we going to do about it? Michael's phone was already ringing. His PR team, his lawyers, board members, everyone wanted to know how to handle the situation. But all Michael could think about was how this would affect Amanda and Susan. He called Susan immediately. Are you okay? Have you seen the papers? I'm at work, but Nicole called me. Michael, there are reporters outside my apartment building. I can't go home. Come to my office. Bring Amanda here after school. I'll have security escort you. No, that will just make it worse. If they see us together now, it'll confirm everything they're saying. I don't care what they're saying. I care about you and Amanda being safe. Michael, maybe we should step back for a while. Let this blow over. No. Michael's voice was firm. We're not hiding. We're not ashamed of our family. But the pressure mounted throughout the day. The board of directors called an emergency meeting, expressing concern about how the scandal might affect the company's stock price. Michael's mother called from her home in Europe, demanding to know why she had learned about her granddaughter from a tabloid. Even worse, parents at Amanda's school were talking, and Susan received several uncomfortable phone calls from other mothers. That evening, Michael, Susan, and Amanda were effectively trapped in Michael's house by a small crowd of photographers and reporters camped outside. Amanda didn't understand why they couldn't go to the park or why there were strange people with cameras trying to take her picture. Daddy, why are those people outside? She asked, peering through the curtains. They're just curious about our family, sweetheart. They'll go away soon. But I want to go play outside. Michael's heart broke at the disappointment in her voice. This was exactly what he had been afraid of, that his world would complicate and potentially damage the simple joy of Amanda's childhood. The situation got worse when Nicole arrived, clearly upset and ready for a fight. This is exactly what I was afraid of, she said to Susan, not bothering to lower her voice despite Amanda's presence in the next room. You've turned my niece into a media circus. She's 6 years old, Susan. She doesn't deserve this. It's not Susan's fault, Michael said firmly. This is my life, my world that's causing the problems. Exactly. And maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to play house with my sister and her daughter. Nicole, stop, Susan said quietly. This isn't helping. Isn't it? Look around, Susan. Look at what this relationship has cost you. You can't go home, Amanda can't play outside, and now everyone knows your business. Is this really what you want for your daughter? The argument continued until Amanda appeared in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. Why is everyone yelling? Did I do something wrong? Michael immediately knelt down and pulled her into his arms. No, baby girl. You didn't do anything wrong. The grown-ups are just having a disagreement. Is it about me? Is it because I'm not good enough? Amanda Thompson, Michael said firmly, you are perfect exactly as you are. This has nothing to do with you being good enough. But the damage was done. Amanda was upset and confused. Susan was torn between her sister's concerns and her feelings for Michael, and Michael felt like everything he had worked to build with his new family was falling apart. The breaking point came 2 days later when Michael received a call from Amanda's school. Someone had leaked the story to the local media, and reporters had actually shown up at the elementary school, trying to get photos and quotes about Amanda. The principal had been forced to implement security measures to protect all the students. This is unacceptable, the principal told Michael over the phone. I understand that this isn't your fault, but we have to consider the safety and privacy of all our students. If this continues, we may need to discuss alternative arrangements for Amanda's education. Michael hung up the phone feeling like his world was crashing down around him. When he told Susan what had happened, she made a decision that broke both their hearts. I'm taking Amanda to stay with Nicole for a while, she said quietly. Just until this dies down. Susan, no. We can work through this together. Can we? Michael, your board is pressuring you to distance yourself from us. The media is treating our daughter like a curiosity. She can't even go to school without being harassed. How is this working through anything? So what are you saying? That it's over? I'm saying that I need to protect my daughter. And right now, being with you isn't protecting her, it's putting her in danger. That night, Michael helped them pack a bag while Amanda cried because she didn't understand why she had to leave her daddy's house. As he watched them drive away with Nicole, Michael felt like he was losing everything that mattered. The next few days were the longest of Michael's life. He threw himself into damage control, working with his PR team to craft statements and with his lawyers to explore legal action against the most invasive publications. But nothing filled the emptiness of coming home to a house that suddenly felt enormous and lonely. Robert continued to pressure him to make a clean break from the situation. Cut them a check, set up a trust fund for the kid and move on. This is damaging the company, Michael. They're my family, Michael said for the 100th time. They're a liability. And if you can't see that, maybe you're not thinking clearly about what's best for the company. The company isn't the most important thing anymore. It should be. It's what your father built, what he left you to protect. Michael stared at his business partner, realizing that they had fundamentally different values. My father also taught me that family comes first. Always. Even if it costs you everything else? Yes. Even then. That evening, Michael made a series of phone calls that would change everything. He called his PR team and told them to schedule a press conference for the next day. He called his lawyers and had them draft several important documents. And finally, he called Detective Rivera. I need another favor, Carlos. I need to find out who leaked the story about my family to the press. And I need to know tonight. Michael, are you sure you want to go down this road? Sometimes it's better not to know. I'm sure. Someone violated my family's privacy, and they put my daughter at risk. I want to know who. The answer came back within hours, and it hit Michael like a punch to the gut. The leak had come from his own assistant, Jennifer, who had been secretly recording his conversations and selling information to tabloid reporters for months. She's been feeding them stories about your personal life for a while, Carlos explained. The pregnancy story was just the biggest one. She made over $50,000 selling information about you. Michael felt sick. Jennifer had been with him for 5 years. He had trusted her with his most personal information, and she had betrayed that trust for money. He fired her immediately, had security escort her from the building, and then called his lawyers to explore legal action. But the damage was done. His private life had been exposed, and his family was paying the price. The press conference the next day would either save his relationship with Susan and Amanda, or end it forever. Michael just prayed he was making the right choice. The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. at Thompson Industries headquarters. Michael stood in front of the bathroom mirror in his office, adjusting his tie for the 3rd time and trying to calm his nerves. In 30 minutes, he would face a room full of reporters and cameras to make a statement that would either restore his family's privacy or destroy his career. At this point, he didn't care which. Jennifer's betrayal had cut deeper than any business setback he had ever experienced. For 5 years, he had trusted her with his schedule, his personal information, and his private thoughts. She had heard him talking to Susan on the phone, had seen him struggle with the revelation about Amanda, had witnessed his joy at becoming a father. And she had sold all of it to the highest bidder. David Kim knocked on the office door. Michael, it's time. The media room is packed. David, are you sure about this strategy? Once I say what I'm planning to say, there's no taking it back. It's risky, but it's the right thing to do. You're taking control of the narrative instead of letting them write the story for you. Michael walked into the media room to find dozens of reporters, cameras, and recording equipment. The room buzzed with anticipation. They were expecting either a denial, an explanation, or perhaps even an announcement that he was stepping down from the company. They weren't expecting what he was about to give them. Michael stepped up to the podium and waited for the room to quiet. When he spoke, his voice was clear and confident. Good morning. I called this press conference to address the recent media coverage about my personal life, and to set the record straight about several important matters. He paused, making eye contact with several reporters in the front row. First, yes, I have a daughter. Her name is Amanda Thompson. She is 6 years old, and she is the most important person in my life. I also have a relationship with her mother, Susan Williams, who is an extraordinary woman and an incredible mother. Hands shot up around the room, but Michael continued without taking questions. Second, I want to address how this information became public. For the past several months, someone close to me has been recording private conversations and selling that information to tabloid publications. That person was my former assistant, Jennifer Chin, who violated her confidentiality agreement and betrayed my trust for financial gain. The room erupted in murmurs and furious note-taking. Miss Chen's actions have caused tremendous pain to my family, particularly to my 6-year-old daughter, who has been subjected to harassment at her elementary school because of this invasion of privacy. I am pursuing legal action against Miss Chin and any publication that has used this illegally obtained information. Michael's voice grew stronger as he continued. But most importantly, I want to address the characterization of my family in these reports. Susan Williams is not a gold digger or an opportunist. She is a hard-working single mother who raised my daughter for 6 years without any financial support from me, not because she didn't deserve it, but because I didn't know Amanda existed. The room was completely silent now, hanging on every word. 7 years ago, during one of the darkest periods of my life following my father's death, I met Susan at a restaurant where she was working as a waitress. We spent one night together, a night that was meaningful to both of us. When she became pregnant and tried to contact me, those messages were intercepted by my father's assistant, who believed she was protecting me from distraction during a difficult time. Michael pulled out a folder of documents. I have phone records, documented evidence of Susan's attempts to reach me, and testimony from the assistant who blocked those communications. Susan Williams spent 6 years believing that I knew about my daughter and chose not to be involved. The truth is, I didn't know about Amanda until 3 weeks ago, when she walked up to me at a charity event and asked if I was her daddy. Several reporters gasped audibly. Since that day, I have been trying to make up for 6 years of lost time. I have been learning how to be a father to an incredible little girl who deserves the world. And I have been falling in love with the woman who gave her life, who raised her to be kind and smart and brave, who protected her from a world that can be cruel to people without money or connections. Michael's voice became emotional as he continued. The media attention over the past week has been devastating to my family. My daughter cannot understand why strangers want to take her picture or why she can't go to school without security escorts. The woman I love is afraid to be seen with me because every moment of our relationship is being scrutinized and judged. He looked directly into the main camera. So I'm here today to ask for something that shouldn't need to be asked for: privacy for my family. Amanda Thompson is a 6-year-old child who deserves to grow up without cameras following her to school. Susan Williams is a private citizen who deserves to live her life without being subjected to invasive speculation about her motives or her character. Michael paused, then made the announcement that would shock everyone in the room. Effective immediately, I am stepping back from day-to-day operations at Thompson Industries. I will remain on the board of directors, but I am removing myself from the public spotlight that has made my family a target. My first priority is not running a corporation. It's being a father to my daughter and a partner to the woman I love. The room exploded with questions, but Michael held up his hand. I won't be taking questions today. However, I will say this. If any publication continues to harass my family, particularly my 6-year-old daughter, they will face the full force of my legal team. Amanda Thompson is a child, and she deserves to be protected like any other child. As Michael left the podium, he could hear the chaos erupting behind him. Reporters were shouting questions, phones were ringing, and his PR team was scrambling to manage the fallout. But Michael felt lighter than he had in days. He drove directly to Nicole's house, where Susan and Amanda had been staying. When Susan answered the door, her eyes were red from crying. I saw the press conference, she said quietly. Michael, you didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. I had to protect you and Amanda. I had to tell the truth. But your company, your career, you just threw it all away. I didn't throw anything away. I chose what was most important to me. Amanda appeared behind Susan, still in her pajamas despite it being almost noon. Daddy? You're on TV. Michael scooped her up in his arms. Hi, baby girl. How are you feeling? Better now that you're here. Mommy was sad, but now she's smiling. Michael looked at Susan over Amanda's head. I love you both more than anything else in the world. I don't care what it costs me professionally or financially. You and Amanda are my family, and I will do whatever it takes to protect you. What happens now? Susan asked. Now we figure out how to move forward. Together as a family. If you'll have me. Susan stepped closer to him, tears streaming down her face. Michael Thompson, are you asking what I think you're asking? Michael set Amanda down and got down on one knee right there in Nicole's doorway. He pulled out a ring box that he had been carrying for days, waiting for the right moment. Susan Williams, you are the strongest, most incredible woman I have ever known. You raised our daughter to be perfect, you survived years of struggle with grace and dignity, and you taught me what it means to love someone more than yourself. Will you marry me? Susan stared at the ring, a simple, elegant solitaire that was perfect in its understated beauty. Michael, are you sure? After everything that's happened, all the chaos and media attention. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Mommy, say yes. Amanda jumped up and down excitedly. Say yes so we can be a real family. Susan looked at Michael, then at Amanda, then back at Michael. Yes, she said, laughing through her tears. Yes, I'll marry you. As Michael slipped the ring onto her finger and kissed her in Nicole's doorway, Amanda cheered and clapped her hands. Neighbors came out to see what the celebration was about, and within minutes, they were surrounded by well-wishers and congratulations. For the first time in weeks, Michael felt like everything was going to be okay. He had lost his position as CEO, he would probably face months of legal battles, and his life would never be the same. But he had gained something infinitely more valuable: a family who loved him for who he was, not what he owned. 6 months later, Michael Thompson stood on the beach at sunrise, adjusting his bow tie and watching the waves crash against the shore. The small wedding ceremony would begin in an hour, with only close family and friends in attendance. After the media circus of the previous year, he and Susan had chosen to keep their wedding private and intimate. Amanda came running across the sand in her flower girl dress, her hair decorated with small white flowers. "Daddy, look. I found a perfect shell for Mommy." Michael knelt down to examine the seashell she had discovered. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. Mommy will love it." "Is she nervous?" "I'm a little nervous." "A little nervous is normal. But you know what? We're going to be the most beautiful family anyone has ever seen." Detective Rivera approached them, looking uncomfortable in his formal attire. "Michael, how are you holding up?" "I'm perfect, Carlos. Thank you for being here. Wouldn't miss it. You know, your father would be proud of you. You chose love over everything else, just like he always said was most important." The legal battles had been lengthy but successful. Jennifer Chin had been prosecuted for breach of confidentiality and illegal recording, and several publications had paid substantial settlements for their invasion of privacy. Michael had used the settlement money to establish a foundation focused on protecting children from media exploitation. Stepping back from Thompson Industries had been the right decision. Robert had taken over as CEO, and the company was thriving under his leadership. Michael remained on the board and continued to be involved in major decisions, but he no longer lived his life according to corporate schedules and business demands. Instead, he had started a smaller investment company focused on supporting businesses owned by women and minorities. It was challenging work that felt meaningful in a way that pure profit maximization never had. He was making less money but felt infinitely richer. Nicole approached, carrying a bouquet of white roses. "The bride is ready when you are." "And Michael? Thank you." "For what?" "For proving me wrong. For being the man my sister and niece deserve." The ceremony was held on a cliff overlooking the ocean, with 25 guests seated in white chairs decorated with ribbons that fluttered in the sea breeze. Michael's mother had flown in from Europe and was already doting on her new granddaughter. A few close business associates were present, but mostly it was family, the family they had chosen and the family they had created together. When the music began and Susan appeared at the end of the short aisle, Michael felt his breath catch in his throat. She wore a simple white dress that moved beautifully in the ocean breeze, her hair loose and flowing, her face radiant with joy. She looked like everything he had ever dreamed of and never dared to hope for. Amanda walked ahead of her mother, carefully scattering rose petals and taking her role as flower girl very seriously. When she reached Michael, she stood on her tiptoes and whispered, "Doesn't Mommy look like a princess?" "She looks like the most beautiful woman in the world," Michael whispered back. The ceremony was brief and personal. They had written their own vows, promising to love each other through good times and difficult ones, to put their family first, and to never let outside pressures come between them. "Susan," Michael said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes, "7 years ago, you saved me from the darkest moment of my life. You gave me hope when I had none, and you gave me the greatest gift anyone has ever given me, our daughter. Today I promise to spend the rest of my life being worthy of that gift. I promise to love you and Amanda with everything I have, to protect our family, and to never let a day pass without showing you how grateful I am that you're mine." Susan's vows were equally moving. "Michael, you taught me that love doesn't have to be earned through struggle and sacrifice. You showed me that I deserve to be cherished, that Amanda deserves to have a father who adores her, and that our little family is worth fighting for. I promise to trust you with my heart, to build a life with you that's based on love rather than fear, and to never forget how lucky we are to have found our way back to each other." When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Michael kissed Susan as the sun climbed higher in the sky, their guests cheered, and Amanda threw the rest of her rose petals into the air with abandon. The reception was held at a nearby restaurant that they had rented for the afternoon. There were no photographers, no media presence, just family and friends celebrating the beginning of a new chapter. Amanda gave a speech that brought everyone to tears, thanking her new daddy for making her mommy so happy and promising to be the best daughter ever. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, Michael found himself standing on the restaurant's deck with Susan and Amanda, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. "What are you thinking about?" Susan asked, leaning against his side. "I'm thinking about how different my life is from what I thought it would be a year ago. I thought success meant building an empire, accumulating wealth, being the most powerful person in the room. And now I know that success means this, standing here with my wife and daughter, knowing that I'm exactly where I belong." Amanda had fallen asleep in Michael's arms, exhausted from the excitement of the day. As he carried her to the car, she stirred and mumbled, "I love you, Daddy. I love you too, baby girl. Forever and always." As they drove home to the house they now shared as a family, Michael reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. A year ago, he had been a successful but lonely billionaire who measured his worth by his bank account and his business achievements. Today, he was a husband and father whose greatest accomplishment was the love of a 6-year-old girl who had asked him if he was her daddy. The media attention had eventually died down, especially after Michael's withdrawal from public life. There were still occasional articles about the billionaire who gave up his empire for love, but they were mostly positive now, focusing on the foundation he had started and his work supporting minority-owned businesses. More importantly, Amanda was thriving. She had adjusted well to having a father in her life, and the security and stability that came with Michael's presence had allowed her to blossom in ways that amazed both her parents. She was confident, happy, and secure in the knowledge that she was loved unconditionally. 3 months after the wedding, they received wonderful news. Susan was pregnant with their second child. When they told Amanda she was going to be a big sister, she danced around the living room with joy, already making plans for all the things she would teach the baby. "Can I help pick the name?" she asked, bouncing on Michael's lap. "Of course you can, sweetheart. What do you think we should call your little brother or sister?" "If it's a girl, I think we should call her Hope, because that's what Daddy gave us when he found us." Michael and Susan exchanged a look over Amanda's head, both of them moved by their daughter's wisdom. "And if it's a boy?" Susan asked. "James, like Grandpa. Daddy says Grandpa would have loved me, so maybe he can love the baby too, even from heaven." As Michael held his daughter and his pregnant wife on the couch in their living room, surrounded by the comfortable chaos of family life, he understood that he had found something more valuable than all the money in the world. He had found his purpose, his home, and his heart. The little girl who had asked him if he was her daddy had given him the greatest gift of all. She had taught him how to love unconditionally, how to put family first, and how to measure success not in dollars or deals, but in bedtime stories, scraped knees that needed kissing, and the simple joy of being exactly where he belonged. Michael Thompson had spent his whole life building an empire, but his real legacy would be the family he loved and the children who would carry his heart into the future. Dear amazing listeners, thank you so much for joining Michael, Susan, and little Amanda on their incredible journey from strangers to a beautiful family. This story was written with so much love and care, hoping to touch your hearts the way these characters touched mine while writing their tale. I'm curious about your thoughts and would love to hear from you. Which moment in the story made you feel the most emotional? Was it when Amanda first asked, "Are you my daddy?" Or perhaps when Michael stepped down from his company to protect his family? What did you think about Patricia's role in keeping Michael and Susan apart? Do you believe people can have good intentions but still cause tremendous harm? How did you feel about Michael's decision to give up his CEO position for his family? Do you think he made the right choice? Which character's journey resonated with you the most? Michael learning to be a father, Susan learning to trust again, or Amanda getting the complete family she always dreamed of? What was your favorite family moment between the three of them? Your comments and thoughts mean the world to me. Please share your feelings about this story. I'd love to know which parts made you smile, cry, or feel hopeful about love and family.